Chapter 255. The Dragon Duchess 1. The Dragon Duchess? This was the first time Eugene had heard of her. However, he immediately recognized that Noir was referring to the young master of the Dragon Demon Castle, whom he'd had a suspicion about for some time. Noir's confirmation regarding the young master made Eugene all the more certain. As expected, the one in the Dragon Demon Castle must be Raizakia's hatchling. However, due to his wariness toward Noir, he didn't show any indication of this on his face. The offer was certainly tempting, but he couldn't fathom why the eccentric woman was willing to provide assistance in infiltrating the Dragon Demon Castle. Well, only those who know of her existence call her the Dragon Duchess. Her real name is... Right, it's Ramra. Yes, I know. It's quite a dead giveaway, isn't it? Noir quipped, with her eyes twinkling mischievously. Wasn't the master of the Dragon Demon Castle the Black Dragon, one of Helmuth's 3 dukes? Said Eugene. There's no need to pretend, my dear, Noir replied with a sly grin as she crossed her legs seductively. Although Noir's appearance was alluring, Eugene remained unfazed. In fact, he always felt an intense urge to chop off her head and crush her heart whenever she behaved in such a manner. Noir leaned forward. Her eyes were glinting with amusement as she addressed Eugene directly. Eugene Lionheart, she said with her voice taking on a playful lilt. You came here because you knew that Raizakia was absent from the Dragon Demon Castle, didn't you? Eugene pulled his features into a blank mask, feigning ignorance. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied coolly. Noir giggled at his response, tilting her head to the side. In a sudden burst of magic, her clothing vanished, leaving her in nothing but her underwear. The sudden display of skin was clearly intended to distract Eugene, but he remained resolute and his expression was unchanged. Eugene's response was sharp and to the point. Fuck off, he said curtly, clearly unimpressed by Noir's attempts to manipulate him. He knew all too well what she was doing. She was using the demon eye of fantasy to create illusions and play with his mind. Eugene felt a sense of disdain toward her fraudulent ability, but at the same time, a chill ran down his spine as well. In her true form, Noir could conjure illusions that left no room for predictions or foresight. There seemed to be no limitations to her power, making her a dangerous adversary to face. In contrast, the demon eye of darkness, which belonged to Iris, the Abyssal Princess, could only be utilized under certain conditions. Iris could only create dark matter within her line of sight, and the moment she produced it, her eyes would glimmer. The stark difference in limitations between the two demonies was not lost on Eugene. However, Eugene had learned that the limitations of Iris's abilities were not absolute. He had observed her create dark matter without displaying any indicators, suggesting that her powers were more versatile than previously thought. It was evident to Eugene that if Iris had been capable of generating dark matter without showing any signs right from the start, she would have done so. This realization gave him an idea of the extent of her powers. It was no easy feat to produce dark matter without displaying any telltale signs. In contrast, Noir Giabella was able to do precisely that while using her demon eye of fantasy with ease. This was a clear indication of the power disparity between Noir and Iris. Is this not to your liking? Or is your heart unshaken because you know this is just an illusion? Asked Noir. I told you to fuck off, responded Eugene. Well, what's wrong with this? I was just trying to be fun because I thought you might get bored during our conversation. If you have any preferences, then... how about this? Noir smiled mischievously and pointed at her face, turning her dark hair purple. Did I go too far? But... Noir's head rolled off her shoulders and fell onto her lap, but she simply adjusted the position of her head and flashed a smile. Whoosh. Noir's appearance changed once again, marking the end of the illusion. She had not actually been standing there in her underwear, and her head was still securely attached to her body. Giggling to herself, she pushed her sunglasses higher up on her nose. I get it. Sup. Don't be upset. Let's continue our conversation, Noir said. As I was saying, Eugene Lionheart, you came here with the knowledge that Raizakia was not present at the Dragon Demon Castle, right? And I thought I told you that I don't know what you are talking about, retorted Eugene. Noir Giabella's words were dripping with honeyed sarcasm as she spoke to Eugene. He could see the amusement dancing in her eyes as she continued to question him. Really, it's very adorable that you keep trying to feign ignorance, Noir said with a bright smile on her lips. Eugene Lionheart, if you really met Sienna Meridian and became her successor, then she must have told you about Raizakia. Am I wrong? Eugene knew that Noir was right. Sienna had indeed informed him about Raizakia, but he was not willing to give Noir any information. He kept his face stoic and asked her, "Why do you think that?" Noir cackled in response. "I guess you don't want to talk about it. That's okay. Are you wondering why I'm talking about this? Well, Raizakia's a dragon who's gone bad, right? The dragon who betrayed his kind. Everyone knows that he killed the former dragon lord and swallowed his heart whole." Eugene's eyes narrowed as he shot back. So what? He was growing tired of Noir's teasing and wanted to cut straight to the point. Nevertheless, Noir simply chuckled, undeterred by Eugene's sharp tone. "Raizakia was very, very obsessed with power," she said in a contemplative tone. "However, there wasn't really a good way for him to build up strength. Even though he is a fallen dragon, a dragon is still a dragon regardless. Raizakia, the fallen dragon, was just as haughty and headstrong as any of his kind. He refused to enter into contracts with demons to bolster his influence and might. And given his contempt for humans, he also declined to collect their life force or make deals with them. His refusal to seek out alternative avenues for power meant that he was left with limited options for building up his strength." Noir began to divulge the information that Eugene was seeking. Then what would he have been left with? What would he have been obsessed with? Dragon hearts. That arrogant lizard always said, and he was quite sincere, that the only thing that could fatten him was the precious hearts of other dragons. He was also greedy for the dragon heart in Vladimir, but at that time His Majesty the Demon King of Incarceration was managing Vladimir. Moreover, most dragons had gone into hiding as well, so it was quite difficult to find them, she explained. So, in the end, Raizakia turned his attention to Sienna Meridian's Akasha. Raizakia even created a draconic spell for the purposes of searching for and getting responses from dragon hearts. He pondered if there were any ways for him to take Akasha away from Sienna. Noir revealed. "Then why didn't he try to kill Lady Sienna and take it from her earlier on?" asked Eugene. "He obviously could not have done such a thing. Do you know how sensitive everyone was during that era?" Even though Raizakia was completely out of his mind, he realized that he could not hit Sienna Meridian at a time when peace was just blossoming, answered Noir. With a grin, she glanced at Mare, who was standing behind Eugene with Christina. Nonetheless, Mare simply stood still due to her fear of and hatred toward Noir. "Now it's only my speculation from here on. The three Dukes of Helmuth, Gavid, Raizakia and myself, are always keeping each other in check. In particular, Raizakia is a greedy dragon, so Gavid and I have no choice but to pay particular attention to him. We never know when he might do something crazy," continued Noir. In Eugene's opinion, Norgiabella was equally as crazy and Gavid Lindman wasn't far behind them either. Obviously the same was true of Raizakia. That crazy dragon was the first traitor of the dragons. When Raizakia left the Dragon Demon Castle, I knew that he had left, though I wasn't sure of the reason. But what's this? Sienna Meridian just so happened to go into seclusion at the same time. So let's let our imaginations run wild. Raizakia attacked Sienna Meridian to take away Akasha, even though he had sat still before. Why, you ask? Because Sienna Meridian had been staying in Aroth until then. Noir's eyes curved into a smile. The Samar Forest. A place away from any spying eyes of the continent, the Forest of Elves. It's a place that is difficult to enter unless you're an elf. Raizakia would have searched for Akasha and realized Sienna Meridian had entered the elves' forest. He must have thought it would be worth a shot in the elves' forest, away from all the crowd in Aroth. Noir was only voicing her speculation, but it was quite close to the truth. Raizakia had headed to the elves' forest to rob Sienna of Akasha. He came to realize that Sienna had sustained a fatal injury, then he made the decision to kill her to take Akasha away. But Raizakia has not returned for 200 years. The same goes for Sienna Meridian. The two must have fought and Raizakia failed. Well, at least that's what I imagine happened. Honestly, I'm not convinced that the Black Dragon was defeated by a human wizard, but I don't think it's out of the question since he was up against Sienna Meridian, concluded Noir. She had initially thought that Sienna Meridian was dead, but seeing that Akasha was now in Eugene's hands, it was clear to her that Sienna Meridian was still alive. If you really met Sienna Meridian and personally received Akasha from her, then you should have heard about Raizakia. Are you continuing to play dumb for Sienna Meridian's sake? Or is it just pride? Asked Noir. This is the first time I'm hearing that Raizakia had a hatchling, Eugene said nonchalantly, ignoring Noir's questions despite the fact that she had spoken in a lordly manner with her chest all puffed out. Noir puffed up her cheeks as well for Eugene to see and stared at him. Of course, it's the first time you've heard of it. It's not something that's known to the public. Even a dragon wasn't capable of reproducing without a partner. They could not lay an egg alone. Raizakia already had an egg when he surrendered to Helmuth. Well, this is, of course, quite obvious. Where could you find a dragon who would be willing to sleep with and lay an egg for the one that had betrayed their entire race? Said Noir. Dragons possessed long lifespans, but this also meant it took them hundreds of years to fully mature. Even hatching from an egg would take 100 years, give or take a dozen. Raizakia had been revered as an ancient dragon long before he betrayed his own kind. He had mated with another dragon, and together they had fought alongside their brethren against the Demon King of Destruction and the Demon King of Incarceration. However, in the midst of battle, Raizakia's mate perished at the hands of the Demon King of Destruction. Seizing the opportunity, Raizakia consumed the Lord's heart before turning traitor, taking his egg with him. So, I guess even that traitor has paternal love. I can't believe he bothered to take the egg when he turned sides, muttered Eugene. What did you just say? Asked Noir with a curious expression. Even that traitor has paternal. Ahaha. Noir couldn't contain her laughter as Eugene attempted to finish his sentence. Her amusement was overwhelming her even though Eugene had gone through the trouble of repeating himself. Noir clutched her stomach and let out a roaring laugh, not even bothering to hide her mirth. Paternal love? Raizakia? I understand. Eugene Lionheart, in the end you're still a human, so it may seem like that from a human's perspective. Raizakia loving his children? We're talking about the crazy black dragon, right? There's no way he could have such emotions. Then what is it? Asked Eugene. It's obvious, right? He brought the eggs so that he could raise his child before eating them, responded Noir. Just as Noir couldn't understand the concept of paternal love, Eugene couldn't understand her words either. He stared at Noir with a look of disbelief. Noir couldn't help but chuckle as she recounted Raizakia's depraved plans to Eugene. To be exact, she said, he planned to raise his child, have them give birth and then eat them. And this isn't my speculation. As I said before, Raizakia was arrogant and ostentatious. He would tell me all about his plans when we sometimes met in Pandemonium. The gathering of the loyalty at Babel in Pandemonium was a long-standing tradition, initially conceived as a means for the three dukes to keep each other in line. Over time, the meetings evolved into a more relaxed and social affair, spanning centuries. It's not a pleasant thing to talk about, but Raizakia planned to raise his hatchling, have them lay eggs, and have the new hatchlings breed to give birth to more dragons. Well, that's how he planned to raise his descendants. He would devour the descendants who were lacking, and instead of demons he would make dragons into his subjects. Usually, inbreeding results in odd results, but I wonder if it's the same for dragons. I was curious about that, but since Raizakia disappeared, I have no way of confirming it. Crazy bastard. Eugene had never imagined that the black dragon would be so depraved. No, in the first place, was doing such a thing as he'd planned even possible? His plan wasn't an impossible one. Even though Raizakia was crazy, he wasn't lacking in ability. In the moments leading up to Raizakia's sudden disappearance, his hatchling had just emerged from its egg. Raizakia wasted no time in taking a piece of his own dragon heart and implanting it into the newborn's forehead. With this act, he ensured absolute control over the hatchling, whose sole purpose was to lay eggs indefinitely. It couldn't have been Raizakia's intention, but the Dragon Duchess is able to rule over the Dragon Demon Castle thanks to the dragon heart that he gave her when she hatched, said Noir. Raizakia's few subjects were bound to the Black Dragon by contract and in turn, also to the hatchling who possessed a portion of his dragon heart. It would have been useless if Raizakia had died though. So, my dear Eugene, are you going to continue playing dumb? I know you heard the story about Raizakia from Sienna Meridian. I don't think he's dead, considering that the contracts and the draconic spell of the Dragon Demon Castle are still intact, said Noir. I told you I don't know, repeated Eugene. You just keep telling blatant lies, don't you? I guess you don't have any intention of telling me the truth. Then let me ask you something else. My dear Eugene, why are you trying to infiltrate the Dragon Demon Castle? Asked Noir. I want the dragon heart, said Eugene. It was an excuse, but it was a convincing one. Ah, as expected. Are you the same as the rest? Dragon heart really is a rare treasure. If I knew that the world would turn out like this, I would have killed some dragons and taken their hearts 300 years ago, Noor said with genuine regret while licking her lips. Then she turned her gaze to Eugene with a deep smile. So, I was right about what you said after all. You came because you knew Raizakia wasn't at the Dragon Demon Castle. You weren't sure about the existence of the Dragon Duchess, but you had speculated about a hatchling. Think as you please, said Eugene. It's truly adorable how you so desperately pretend. My dear Eugene, I can also guess why you are greedy for the dragon heart. It's because you're anxious, right? You want to build up your strength as fast as possible. Then that leaves me no choice but to cooperate, said Noir. I don't understand that. Morgiabella, why are you cooperating with me? I am your enemy, said Eugene. He needed to know for sure, which was why he asked, but his words made Noir hug her chest with an erotic moan. Enemy? You said, enemy. I love it. Why am I cooperating with you? Because I want you to be strong like Vermouth and run rampant like Hamel, explained Noir. What nonsense is this? Eugene felt startled, but he desperately kept a straight face. That's all, he asked. I guess you don't like my answer? Then I'll give you another reason. I don't like Raizakia and I don't like the Dragon Demon Castle. I've always wanted to kill him myself, but I was never in a position to do that. Why? Because Duke Gavid, the wonderful blade of incarceration, is always wary of me reigning solo. In fact, Noor had never been fond of the name Three Dukes. Rather than having Raizakia, who wasn't even here, she sincerely believed it would be better for someone else, like Edmund or other new demons, to ascend to the title. In other words, what Noir wanted was a break in the status quo, and this fueled her desire to help Eugene. Eugene Lionheart, the hero, would cause the Dragon Demon Castle to sink. She couldn't help but be excited about what further changes it would bring. Firstly, you will need to figure out how things are in Carabloom. Do you know the current situation? Asked Noir. I heard that the Lord of Roll, who is located next to it, is picking a fight, answered Eugene. He had come to an understanding of the situation from the news he gathered after arriving. It was simple provocations until now, but Count Carrad seems to be wanting something more. He's preparing for a real war, explained Noir. I thought he was unaware of Raizakia's situation, said Eugene. Well, they are located adjacent to each other. He must have gotten a hint about it after 200 years of silence, but that's not his only reason, continued Noir. The mining district of Carabloom was under the jurisdiction of the Dragon Demon Castle, and the dwarves there were being spotted in the black market. Count Carrad is blatantly preparing for a territorial war, but the Dragon Demon Castle isn't showing any response at all. On the contrary, the inhabitants of Carabloom are hoping for Count Carrad to become their new lord. That's how bad the public opinion is right now. The lord of the Dragon Demon Castle had not appeared in public for 200 years. He was a lord who neglected his territory and its residents. The only reason they could not openly blame him was that they feared him as he was a dragon. The more scared and anxious the people are, the more desperate they will be to find peace of mind, said Noir with a grin. Obviously, there are many night demons in Carabloom. Firstly, I will let you into Carabloom using my children. That will be very easy. And then, the place I want to go to is the Dragon Demon Castle, retorted Eugene. Well, that won't be very difficult either. The easiest way would be for me to use the Demon Eye of Fantasy, but I have no intention of getting involved. I don't want to be forced to take responsibility later, said Noir. Aren't you already involved? Asked Eugene. This is different. I'm only helping through my children. That way, if it ever becomes a problem, I could resolve the problem by giving them the heads of my children, answered Noir without hesitation. Even though she was referring to them as her children, she didn't seem to possess any feelings toward them. Only the chosen aristocrats live in the Dragon Demon Castle, and because of Raizakia's stupid idea, I never got any of the night demons into the castle. However, both commoners and nobles wish to have pleasant dreams, right? Among my diligent children in Carabloom, there are high-ranking night demons who deal with the nobles of the Dragon Demon Castle. I should be able to get inside using them as a connection. It can't be that easy. I'm a human after all, Eugene expressed his doubts. It wouldn't be, but that's only if Raizakia were still present. My dear Eugene, there's no need to think too hard about this. In these 200 years of his absence, Raizakia's territory has rotted. Of course, it would be impossible for you to infiltrate the castle by yourself, Noir stated, making sure to emphasize the significance of her help. Additionally, even though it's me, there's one thing I can't do. Christina Rogerus, you will not be able to enter Carabloom. You should know why, right? I knew from the beginning, responded Christina while maintaining a calm expression. With her divine power, she would stand out like a sore thumb among the demons. I'm glad you're quick to understand. Now then, should we start with a stage name? Said Noir with a brilliant smile. Neither Eugene, Christina, nor Anise understood what Noir was talking about. Faced with their questioning gazes, Noir looked confused too. Why are you looking at me like that? I just told you, right? My dear Eugene, you will infiltrate Carabloom with the night demons under my rule, said Noir. Right. So, that means you'll have to pretend to be a night demon as well, right? Otherwise it wouldn't be fun. You're too big to be a succubus, so that would be... No, maybe it doesn't really matter since they're demons anyways. Some like the muscular ones, and you have a pretty face compared to your body, so if we put on makeup and get a wig... Don't fuck with me. Then shall we go with an incubus? That shouldn't be too hard. Noir's earlier words, otherwise it wouldn't be fun, indicated there was no reason for Eugene to pretend to be a night demon. In other words, the disguise was just a fun activity for that lunatic. You can't use the name Eugene, so we will need something else. A stage name. What would be good? What about Tyrius? It's a favorite for the incubi. Get out, spat Eugene with contempt. Chapter 256. The Dragon Duchess 2. Bonus image. 2 days after Noir Giabella's unexpected visit, Eugene sat in his room lost in thought. Suddenly, the door to his room burst open, and Noir Giabella strode in without warning, just as she had done before. It's settled, my dear Eugene, she declared without preamble. Eugene's blood boiled as Noir Giabella referred to him as my dear Eugene. It was the one thing that irked him more than anything else. He couldn't fathom why Noir Giabella was so fixated on him. In fact, he didn't care to understand, nor did he think he could comprehend her motives. He had learned about her many business ventures in Helmuth, and in his opinion, the succubus before him was clearly out of her mind. How could he possibly even attempt to understand a lunatic like her? You will enter the Dragon Demon Castle as a gourmet product, continued Noir. A gourmet product? Asked Eugene. Yes. Noir's smile brightened as she nodded enthusiastically. Eugene had been curious about what she meant, but it appeared to be precisely what he had suspected. Among the nobles who lived in the Dragon Demon Castle, there was a demon folk with an insatiable interest in human flesh. It wasn't something to brag about in the present era, but it wasn't a secret in Raizakia's domain either, given the Black Dragon's notorious animosity toward humans. That particular demon folk in the Dragon Demon Castle was a client of one of the night demons under Noir Giabella's command. My dear Eugene, I'm sure you're aware that Helmuth is unforgiving when it comes to those who trespass illegally. Should the hunting demonic beasts catch you, they will devour you on the spot, Noir warned. Even if one were to evade the beast's gaze, it would only exacerbate the problem. The demon folk hunters were far more intelligent and relentless than the beasts, and they held no regard for the rights of those that they captured. Noir added, and this isn't something to be talked about openly, but the only thing Helmuth respects are the humans who enter the country legally and the law-abiding citizens. Other than that, you demon folk sons of bitches. I knew it. You laugh and act nice on the surface, but you secretly extort human life force, eat humans alive and enslave their souls. Isn't that right? Eugene said, having finally gotten an admission of the demon folk's misdeeds. Eugene pointed his finger at Noir while opening his eyes wide. No matter how much you pretend not to be, demon folks are demon folks after all. What is it that you say? Helmuth is a good place for humans to live. You're obviously deceiving humans with your glib tongues to feast on them after fattening them up like pigs for slaughter. My dear Eugene, calm down, Noir interrupted Eugene in the middle of his sentence and raised her hand toward him. The only human beings who are not shown respect in Helmuth are the illegal immigrants, those who disobeyed the law. My dear Eugene, as you should know very well, Helmuth's laws are very favorable toward humans, but Helmuth is just as harsh on those who break the laws. Even so, eating humans? Fucking demons, Eugene began to protest. However, Noor cut him off mid-sentence, raising a hand to silence him. "Dear Eugene, do try to remain calm," she said, her voice measured and cool. "In Helmuth, the only ones who are denied respect are the illegal immigrants, those who have broken our laws. Our laws, as you know, are designed to benefit humans, and we are quite protective of those who abide by them. But we do not take kindly to those who do not obey the laws. I don't know why you are so angry. In the end, our species are different, right? And my dear Eugene, as far as I know, the Lionheart family acts as the guardian of Ukla's mountain, right?" "So what?" spat Eugene. "Doesn't that share a border with the Samar forest?" Noor asked, her eyes narrowing. "I've heard that many desperate souls attempt to cross it illegally. The Black Lion Knights are tasked with guarding the border. And if they catch anyone breaking the law, they have the authority to execute them, do they not?" She knew the answer already. They did. "It's only natural for a country to punish and deter illegal immigration," Noor continued, with her voice still as measured and cool as before. "And as for the demon folks, well, it's hardly surprising that some still have a taste for human flesh. This is nothing new. Moreover, isn't cannibalism still practiced among humans? Are cannibals not a greater threat since they feast upon their own kind?" Eugene attempted to deny Noir's words, but he recalled the natives of the Samar forest. Quite a few tribes among the barbarians still practiced cannibalism. "As different species, we can never truly understand one another," Noir mused softly. "But we can try. Nevertheless, my dear Eugene, surely there are more pressing matters at hand than criticizing the demons in Helmuth." She raised her black glasses with the tip of her fingers. The eye ornament had appeared out of thin air, evidence of the demon eye of fantasy. She used the demon eye of fantasy just for the sake of wanting to give herself the appearance of an intellectual. Yet when Eugene recoiled with a look of disgust, the glasses disappeared as if they had never existed in the first place. "My dear Eugene, as I said earlier, you will enter Carabloom as an offering for a demon of the Dragon Demon Castle." This wasn't anything for Eugene to worry about. The night demons of Carabloom carried out the orders of their queen perfectly. They had already managed to persuade the gate examiner, who happened to be one of their clients. Sneaking a single human, a mere product, into Carabloom was no issue, particularly given the current state of chaos. Count Carrot of the Roll Fief was gearing up for a territorial war, and though no formal declaration had been made, rumors alone had plunged the Carabloom Fief into disarray. Their lord, the Black Dragon, had been absent for 2 centuries, and there was no response to the ongoing provocations from Count Carrot. Consequently, the atmosphere within the Carabloom Fief had hit rock bottom, and countless demon folks were even fleeing the territory. "And of course, my dear Eugene," said Noir, "you must conceal your identity. We'll need to find a way to cover your distinctive gray hair, and you must never draw the holy sword. Even if the gatekeeper, intoxicated in their sweet dream, is kind and receptive to our requests, they would never let the hero pass." "And after I climb to the Dragon Demon Castle?" asked Eugene. "You are free to do as you wish from then on. My dear Eugene, your purpose is the dragon heart of the Dragon Duchess, right?" Noir said. She grinned before continuing, "You're lucky in that aspect." "I'm lucky. Yes. Sooner or later, a war will break out in the Dragon Demon Castle," Noir stated with a nonchalant expression. Eugene blinked dazedly at her words. "War?" "Yes. In the near future, Count Carrot will declare war and carry out a bold invasion of the Dragon Demon Castle, probably in a few days." "Isn't this too sudden?" "Not necessarily. Count Carrot has been preparing for this war since quite a long time ago. He's prepared an ace up his sleeve, something that's guaranteed to win him this war. Maybe you've heard of the name? The Beast of Ravesta, the head of the beast folk, Jagan." Eugene's countenance stiffened involuntarily. He couldn't possibly be unaware of the name Jagan. Noir's voice was calm and collected as she delivered the news. "A group of beast folk mercenaries, led by none other than Jagan himself, has made their way into the Roll Fief," she explained. "Count Carrot won't be able to keep Jagan in check," Noir continued, her tone turning grave. "He'll have no choice but to declare war and launch his attack on the Dragon Demon Castle. That lunatic Jagan must have come to rule with the sole intention of hunting a dragon. Count Carrot had managed to lure Jagan all the way from Ravesta, a distant land, by tempting him with the prospect of a territorial war with the Dragon Demon Castle." Noir calmly expanded on the situation to Eugene. It's likely that Count Carrot and his army, along with Jagan and his mercenaries, are already en route to Carabloom and the Dragon Demon Castle. They must be feeling confident in their chances of victory, and with no civilians to worry about, they have no reason to hesitate. In fact, they may have already left rule by now. In the realm of Helmuth, only humans were deemed worthy of the title of civilians in accordance with the law. Battles and wars between demon folks were frequent occurrences. They were often fought to gain territory or establish dominance, but the safety of civilians had to be the topmost priority in all such situations. However, when it came to demon folks killing other demon folks during a war, there were no restrictions imposed by Helmuth's laws. In fact, such conflicts were actively encouraged as a means of enhancing the power and prestige of the demon folks. After all, if even this were sanctioned as well, the demon folks would have likely gone insane long ago. That's why timing is important. Eugene, aren't you also worried about how to escape from the Dragon Demon Castle after killing the Dragon Duchess? Moore asked. Eugene's true intention was not to take the heart of the Dragon Duchess but to use her to find Raizakia in the elusive gap between dimensions. Though he couldn't be certain, he held little hope that even encountering the Dragon Duchess would help him locate the rift. Maybe it'll be similar to a kidnapping, Eugene thought. Moreover, it would be a difficult feat for him to escape the Dragon Demon Castle after subduing the Dragon Duchess. I see what you mean. Eugene furrowed his brows as he listened to Noir's explanation. He finally understood the true importance of timing in their plan. As soon as Count Carrot and his forces initiated the invasion of the Dragon Demon Castle, their defenses would be at their weakest point. It was at that critical moment that Eugene's party would have the best opportunity to make their escape. The Dragon Demon Castle's defenses will be destroyed during the course of the invasion. Jagan will lead the invasion into the castle with the beasts, and my dear Eugene, that's when you can escape during all of that chaos, said Noir with a mischievous smile. Of course, it was easier said than done. The first problem would be the assassination of the Dragon Duchess. Even though she was a hatchling around only 200 years old, a dragon was still a dragon, a creature with the hardest scales and bones in the world. Moreover, it would be impossible to assassinate a dragon that was protected with all kinds of magic. If you get lucky, you should be able to escape in the chaos of the invasion after killing the Dragon Duchess. But if you're unlucky, you'll be captured by Jagan before you escape. Noir grinned while imagining the various possible outcomes. Eugene passed through the gate without encountering any problems. The two of them were now comfortably seated in a luxurious car with the Night Demon behind the wheel. As they drove, the Night Demon spoke up. "We are headed to the mining town," the Night Demon said with a smile. "It's quite a place. Did you know it has the highest concentration of dwarves in all of Helmuth? Once a month, they present their crafts and goods to the Dragon Demon Castle." The Night Demon leaned in toward Eugene and continued in a hushed tone. "My client is responsible for inspecting the crafts and goods. You will be accompanying the goods on your journey to the Dragon Demon Castle. My role is simply to escort you and the goods." After that, the Night Demon inquired, "Is there anything else I can assist you with, Sir Human?" "No," replied Eugene without even glancing at the Night Demon. Upon hearing the mention of an inspector, Eugene recalled the information he had looked into regarding the Dragon Demon Castle during an information search in the past. Eugene knew that the works of the dwarves had been siphoned off. Knowing that the dwarves were bound by Raizakia and thus couldn't have been the ones responsible, he had assumed that there was someone else involved in the process. Now it seemed that the culprit was the demon folk inspector who acted as the middleman in the scheme. The inspector is pilfering the goods and daring to sneak in a human in the territory of Raizakia, who had always harbored animosity toward humans. So this is how far it's fallen, Eugene thought. The inspector's audacious actions indicated clearly that the demon folks within the Dragon Demon Castle were convinced that Raizakia was absent, and their loyalty to the hatchling was questionable at best. This realization painted a bleak picture of the upcoming war. It seemed that it would be a sloppy one-sided battle. As the invasion loomed, it was evident that the nobles residing in the Dragon Demon Castle would quickly surrender en masse. They wouldn't stand a chance against the overwhelming forces of Count Carrod's army. With little resistance expected, Jagan would effortlessly lead his beasts to the castle, ready to tear apart the Dragon Duchess limb by limb. They won't even be able to buy time, Eugene thought. It was unfortunate since a fierce resistance from the Dragon Demon Castle and a ferocious battle between the two groups would allow Eugene to escape with ease. And how will you send me to the Dragon Demon Castle? Will it be through a warp gate? Asked Eugene. Yes. The inspector will come down to the mining town through the warp gate. You can stay with the other goods on the cart and head up through the warp gate with the inspector, answered the night demon. And what if that demon folk bastard wants to eat me on the spot? The night demon chuckled, her eyes glinting mischievously as she spoke. That will never happen. Have you not heard from the queen? That demon prides himself on being a gourmet. She paused, shooting her listener a sly wink, and then added, I was the one who informed the queen about this. Bud. Bud is the name of that demon. I memorized his name because he kept asking me to call out his name whenever he was dreaming. The night demon leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Anyway, when I told him that I would give him a human as a gift, Bud was really happy and responded to me, saying that he would cook you using many different methods and hold a secret feast with his friends. Eugene clenched his fists and clicked his tongue, feeling frustrated. The thought of what he would do with the demon folk who had helped him make his way up to the Dragon Demon Castle had never really crossed his mind. However, after hearing what the night demon had to say, Eugene had now made up his mind. He would take the demon folk's head as soon as he arrived at the castle. Carabloom was a small dukedom, and it was Helmuth's finest jewelry mine. Rizakia, the Duke of Carabloom, had been uninterested in expanding his rule unnecessarily, so instead of taking a large territory of useless land, Rizakia had chosen Carabloom, Helmuth's finest jewelry mine, as his dukedom. In terms of the size of the estate, Carabloom was smaller than even the Jidal province, Eugene's hometown. Thanks to this, he was able to arrive at the mining town after traveling about 5 hours from the gate. He exited the car with a large hood covering his head and headed for the mining town's warp gate. The jewelry mine in Carabloom was the best in all of Helmuth. For 3 centuries, the mine had been worked tirelessly by the dwarves, who had no choice but to offer up their precious findings to their absentee lord. Despite the passage of time and the deaths of the original dwarves who had been bound by contracts to work in the mine, those contracts that had been made generations ago continued to apply to the dwarves' descendants. They toiled away in the mines, processing the jewels that were then handed over to the Black Dragon. It was a fate that seemed impossible to escape, as Rizakia's binding magic ensured that the current generation of dwarves would continue to work there until they too passed away. Poor dwarves. They won't ever be able to leave this area for the rest of their lives, commented the night demon. Why? Asked Eugene. The dwarves are bound by contracts with the Black Dragon, and they cannot leave this area without permission, explained the night demon. These contracts had been made under the threat of the Black Dragon's power, and as a result, the dwarves were trapped in their mining town. Despite their captivity, the dwarves continued to work tirelessly, their eyes dull and lifeless from the effects of their permanent restraint. Nevertheless, even in their captivity, the dwarves' skills as craftsmen could not be denied. Eugene could see the fruits of their labor in the loaded carts that were being transported through the warp gate. Each item was expertly crafted, and even Eugene, who was not particularly knowledgeable about such things, could recognize their exceptional quality. This was a matter of course, though. The items were being dedicated to a ferocious and greedy dragon, and if they were of poor quality, they would have to face the full wrath of the dragon. Bud should be here in a minute, said the night demon. Eugene followed her instruction and entered an empty box loaded on top of a cart. You have to stay calm until you arrive at the Dragon Demon Castle, warned the night demon. A lid was placed on top of the box, and Eugene observed the surroundings through a keyhole in the box. After a while, the warp gate was activated. Eris. The sound of the night demon's name echoed through the air, causing her to turn her head. A demon folk had just walked out of the warp gate, and Eugene could see him through the keyhole in the box. The demon's appearance was grotesque, with the features of both an orc and a pig. He waddled over to the night demon, his large belly heaving up and down with each step. It feels different to see you outside the store. Does this mean I'll have the chance to see you outside in the future as well? Bud openly flirted with the night demon before picking up a necklace from the cart. After looking around, he placed the necklace into the night demon's cleavage. Oh my. It's fine. This is nothing compared to the present I'm going to receive today. So Eris, is it that box? asked Bud as the corners of his mouth twitched. The night demon nodded with a smile and Bud approached the box with a gulp. Thud. Bud tapped the box once with his large hand. Eugene curled up into a ball with a frown. After a few more taps, Bud turned around with a satisfied smile. He let out a pleased hum as he pushed the cart containing his gift toward the warp gate, which was activated once more. "This is a wonderful gift," Bud said with a grin, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. The warp gate ceased glowing and the movement of the cart beneath Eugene came to a stop. Through the keyhole he saw that the scene outside had changed drastically. Instead of the dull and dreary mines of Carabloom, the keyhole of the box now revealed a grand view of the Dragon Demon Castle. Eugene had no time to appreciate the sight. He had arrived at his destination and it was time to take action. His plan was to burst out of the box and eliminate Bud without delay, just like he had already resolved to do. Eugene took a deep breath, preparing himself for the task ahead. He was ready to make his move. "Who are you?" However, Bud yelled in surprise before Eugene could jump out of the box. Eugene was surprised as well. A girl dressed in clothes the color of sky blue was standing outside the warp gate. The girl's voice rang out loud and clear, echoing through the corridors of the Dragon Demon Castle as she said, "Inspector Bud, your wrongdoings are known by heaven, by earth, and by me." Bud's eyes widened in shock and he stumbled back a few steps. He opened his mouth to say something but the words got caught in his throat. Before he could even begin to form a coherent response, he felt an overwhelming pressure bearing down on him. Without even realizing what he was doing, he sank to his knees on the cold stone floor. "Are you kneeling in acknowledgement of your sin? But know that simply kneeling will not absolve you of the crimes you committed," continued the girl. "Who might you be?" asked Bud. He didn't understand why he was kneeling and he didn't know who this girl was. However, his body had responded instinctively the moment he saw the red jewel embedded in the girl's forehead. "Do you not recognize who I am? Well, rightly so. However, know that everyone in the Dragon Demon Castle will come to know the name of this lady today. This lady is the legitimate master of the Dragon Demon Castle and the only flesh and blood of the Black Dragon," the girl declared. She waved her hand, which caused her sleeves to flap, and extended her palm toward Bud. "My name is Rhaimira. You wicked soul who dared to touch the offerings to the Dragon Demon Castle. As the master of the Dragon Demon Castle, this lady commands you, immediately end your own life." The girl wasn't given a chance to finish her words. The lid of the box was smashed open and Eugene jumped out. Chapter 257, The Dragon Duchess, 3. Eugene had not planned to run into anyone as soon as he arrived at the Dragon Demon Castle, but it had been inevitable in some ways. In Eugene's opinion, the plan to infiltrate the Dragon Demon Castle was unpolished and full of holes. As such, he had made preparations for the possibility of running into unexpected situations. He was prepared to respond immediately to whatever the situation called for, but when someone started shouting at Bud, Eugene cursed inwardly, "Fuck." It hadn't been within his expectations to run into a problem immediately after arriving. So what could he do? Well, what was there to do really? There was only one thing he could do. He would kill Bud as well as the unknown demon. Then he would infiltrate the Dragon Demon Castle as if nothing had ever happened. After making up his mind, Eugene inspected his opponent through the keyhole. The ostentatious woman referred to herself in third person and spoke in a ridiculous manner. As he studied her appearance, he noticed that she looked only a few years older than Mare. Her hair was parted in the middle. It revealed her forehead, which had a horn sticking out from the center as well as a glinting red jewel embedded in it. "No way." Eugene was astonished. According to Noir's information, the Dragon Duchess had not made an appearance in 200 years. Yet there she was, standing right in front of him at this very moment. "This lady is the legitimate master of the Dragon Demon Castle and the only flesh and blood of the Black Dragon," the girl shouted valiantly while extending her palm toward Bud. Upon hearing this, Eugene no longer harbored any doubts. "My name is Rhaimira. You wicked soul who dared to touch the offerings to the Dragon Demon Castle. As the master of the Dragon Demon Castle, this lady commands you, immediately end your own life." Eugene didn't require any further explanation. Rhaimira had claimed to be the true heir of the Black Dragon and the rightful master of the Dragon Demon Castle. Considering the absurdity of the situation, he couldn't help but question the veracity of her claim, but he resolved to kill her regardless. What? Bud exclaimed. The pig-faced demon folk had not been cautious of the human enclosed in the box, as Eugene had skillfully concealed his mana and abilities while inside. Eugene's sudden emergence caused Bud to turn around, his face twisted with a mixture of shock and terror. Bud's eyes followed Eugene's ascent into the air. Although this was a development that differed significantly from Eugene's original plans, he doggedly executed the part of his strategy that concerned Bud just as he had planned. The moment Eugene burst out of the box, he seized Bud's head and yanked it clean off his body. Kai-ah! Rhaimyra's piercing shriek reverberated through the space. Bud's head was detached from his body with his spine still attached. Despite this, Bud did not succumb to death immediately, possibly due to his accumulated mana. Instead he opened his mouth wide and emitted a high-pitched pig-like squeal, Kai-week. The deafening screams were abruptly silenced as a blaze erupted from Eugene's fingertips and consumed Bud's body. This was no ordinary flame. It was infused with the power of the Sword Force. The power manifested as a sphere of intertwined and razor-sharp emissions that relentlessly tore apart Bud, who was trapped at the heart of the tempestuous vortex. Bud desperately tried to regenerate his body time and time again. Nevertheless, stuck within the confines of the infinite purgatory, his efforts were in vain. Each time his body began to take form again, it was immediately ground to dust by the relentless onslaught of the skill. Eugene had honed infinite purgatory to perfection in his previous life, making it the perfect weapon for eliminating demons with powerful regenerative abilities. Bud's body continued to be torn apart by infinite purgatory, reducing him to unidentifiable pieces. Despite still being alive, his regeneration abilities were failing rapidly, and it was only a matter of time before he met his final demise. The screams that had once echoed throughout the chamber were now silenced, and the only sounds that remained were the crackling of the flames and the swirling of the sword force. Eugene looked away from Bud and stared straight ahead. Heek. Rhaimyra was retreating with a pale expression, her large eyes quivering with fear. Eugene looked around to make sure there were no other demons lurking nearby before turning his attention to her. He examined her carefully, taking note of her appearance. As Eugene took a closer look at Rhaimyra, he realized that while she didn't bear an exact resemblance to Rhyzakia, there were certain similarities. Of course, this was to be expected. Rhaimyra's current form was the result of polymorph, an ability commonly used by dragons. While her human-like appearance differed from her true form, some traits remained. For instance, dragons using polymorph often retained their true eye and hair color to distinguish themselves. Rhaimyra's black hair and purple eyes were a clear nod to her lineage as the Black Dragon. Rhaimyra exclaimed in a panicked voice, "Who are you?" The word intruder came to her mind, causing her legs to tremble and her heart to race faster. Meanwhile, Inspector Bud's body was being ripped apart into a shapeless mass behind the intruder, and the intricate and robust flow of mana used to disintegrate Bud's body only added to Rhaimyra's shock and unease. Her expression stiffened. Truth be told, Rhaimyra was afraid. However, she did not express her fear, or at least she thought she wasn't letting it show. Contrary to her belief, both her legs were trembling. Unfortunately, Rhaimyra was too nervous and frightened to recognize this truth. "You dare? How dare you? How could you bring harm to a servant of the castle in front of this lady, the master of the Dragon Demon Castle? You will not be able to pay for this even with dozens, no hundreds of deaths." Rhaimyra cried loudly. Although she was a hatchling, a dragon was still a dragon. As such, her cry carried the weight of her heritage, dragon fear. Nonetheless, her dragon fear was so weak that it couldn't even hold a candle to the dragon fear that Ariardel had exuded. What is she doing? Mare wondered. In fact, Rhaimyra's dragon fear was so weak that not even Mare felt threatened. Obviously, Rhaimyra's dragon fear failed to affect Eugene's body and mana, so Eugene didn't hesitate and jumped at Rhaimyra. Attack! Rhaimyra was struck with shock, but she swung her hand reactively. It was a sloppy attack, but the power contained in the blow could not be ignored. Eugene had no intention of allowing Rhaimyra to hit him, so he took the strum sword Wmoid out of his cloak. "It is I, Tempest, the Wind Spirit King. I have come to Helmuth." Eugene had been relying on the Holy Sword most of the time in recent battles, so he had rarely used Wmoid of late. In fact, Today was his first time finally drawing the blade once again ever since his arrival in Helmuth. So Tempest screamed as if he had been waiting an eternity for this moment. WND was only used as a conduit in the beginning. Ever since he signed the contract with Tempest, it could talk to Eugene whenever it wanted. So Tempest screaming like this every time he held WND was Tempest being strange and stubbornly insisting on making his presence known. Be quiet, Eugene told Tempest in his mind. Hamel. My shouts can only be heard in your head anyways. I know, but just be quiet. Eugene's cold response seemed to have an effect on Tempest's winds as they slackened slightly. It was almost as if Tempest was trying to convey his displeasure by sulking. However, not all the winds weakened. Only the winds surrounding Eugene weakened, while the winds opposing Rhaenyra's attack intensified into a violent storm. Boom! The air shook with a loud explosion, but the noise didn't reach far beyond its point of origin. Instead, the sound reverberated as if Eugene and Rhaenyra were standing in the depths of a cave. The magic Eugene had cast was muffling any sounds from escaping the area. If Rhaenyra had been more level-headed, she might have noticed the magic enveloping the space and attempted to dispel it. Unfortunately, she was far from being calm and collected at the moment. Rhaenyra's voice shook with fear as she stumbled backward several steps. She stuttered with a pale face and quivering lips. What is it? Rhaenyra was in utter shock and unable to compose herself. Why, intruder! How dare you attack this lady? If you stop now. Alright. If you stop immediately, this lady will forgive you, so. Rhaenyra spoke frantically without taking a single breath. Eugene did not push her further but paused instead. He had sensed it after colliding with her. No, he had in fact sensed it before exchanging a blow with her, but he became certain after. This isn't dark power. Dark energy was a powerful force that was harnessed by the demons, including the demon kings. It was a type of mana that had been infused with the dark essence of demons, and when purified, it became known as dark power. Raizakia, the fallen black dragon, had channeled the boundless mana of his dragon heart into dark power. When Eugene clashed with Rhaenyra, he discovered that, despite being his offspring, Rhaenyra did not possess dark power. Rather, her mana was as pure as that of any other dragon. Hamel. I know. Eugene's expression crumpled. He knew what Tempest had been about to say. There was no way Eugene was unaware since he had been the one to actually exchange a blow with Rhaenyra. Nevertheless, given the present circumstances, he couldn't afford to divert his attention toward this unexpected detail about Rhaenyra. Despite everything, the fact remained that she was a dragon, and he could not afford to lose vigilance. Kaya. Even though Rhaenyra fumbled as if she had never fought in her life, and even though her screams contained not a shred of dignity that belonged to dragons, Eugene did not let his guard down. Kaya. Apart from her personality, tone, and endless screams, it was clear that Rhaenyra wasn't an opponent to be taken easily. It was being proven to him right now. Eugene carefully calculated each strike of his sword, aiming not to deliver a lethal blow to Rhaenyra but to subdue her and use her to find Raizakia through Akasha's draconic spell. He had to hold back his full strength and limit his strikes to only cut what they touched. His plan was not to end Rhaenyra's life but to sever her limbs to immobilize her. Despite that, things weren't going as Eugene wished. Even though his blade made contact with Rhaenyra's body several times, the only things that the fierce flame and the sword force severed were parts of her clothes. His sword and sword force had definitely made contact with her skin, but there weren't any scratches on it, let alone a cut. Rhaenyra was also surprised by the outcome. She couldn't believe it herself, and her eyes filled with wonder as she looked down at her unscathed skin. You lowly human intruder. Your weak blade couldn't even pierce this lady's skin. You won't even get me to shed a single drop of blood. Rhaenyra immediately changed her attitude and proudly puffed out her chest. Then she reached out her hand toward Eugene, allowing her sleeve to flap as if to show off. Repent for your sins, beg for forgiveness in your life. This lady is merciful, and if you sincerely beg for mercy, she will reconsider forgiving you. Eugene's disappointment was palpable as he frowned at WNYD and the sword force, paying no attention to Rhaenyra's nonsensical words. Instead, he stared at WNYD and the sword force with a frown. WNYD's wind intensified as if responding to Eugene's disappointed gaze. Tempest was conveying that his pride had been hurt. Then Eugene's expression darkened as he shifted his stare to Rhaenyra, who was quivering in fear. He had been holding back during their fight, but it was clear to him that he would have to use lethal force to subdue her. "It won't do unless we intend to kill her," Eugene said with a steely resolve. Rhaenyra's jaw dropped in shock and she stumbled back a few steps. Her legs were still shaking and she could feel the cold sweat on her forehead. Intend to kill? So you came here with the intention of assassinating me. Do you know who this lady is? Did you know what you're saying when? Eugene disregarded Rhaenyra's stuttering words. He placed WE back in his cloak and stretched his fingers, making a chilling crackling sound that sent shivers down Rhaenyra's spine. Rhaenyra felt the urge to flee, but her pride as a dragon forbade her from turning her back to the enemy and showing a sign of weakness. Even in the absence of witnesses, she couldn't allow herself to run away from a mere human invader. Meanwhile, Eugene lowered his posture without any knowledge or consideration of Rhaenyra's conflicted thoughts. A flash of purple lightning from Lightning Flash blinded Rhaenyra's line of sight, and her nervous, frightened mind reacted with a delay. Quack. Rhaenyra was winded. Her enemy had charged at her from the front. Eugene had placed everything into speed without trying to use any complicated techniques. Even if Rhaenyra had not been nervous and scared, she could not have reacted in time. Eugene had barreled toward her in a straight line and slammed his shoulder into her solar plexus while wrapping both his arms around her waist. Now Eugene's feet lifted off the ground and his body floated in midair, sustained by the mana coursing through him. He wrapped his arms tighter around Rhaenyra's waist and drove her toward the ground. With a loud rumble, he slammed her back against the ground and continued to push her down. Eugene had learned from his previous attacks that sword force couldn't harm a dragon, even in human form using polymorph. However, he could use sheer force to restrain her and rob her of her freedom. Struggling under Eugene's weight, Rhaenyra shrieked, Kaya, let go. Jijeroff. Rhaenyra found herself in a situation she had never experienced before. Despite the lack of physical pain, the weight of Eugene's body pressing down on hers was overwhelming, and it filled her with fear. Eugene, on the other hand, was completely unaware of the turmoil inside Rhaenyra's mind. He couldn't decipher the meaning of her frantic screams and the word Jeroff, but he did recognize that she lacked proper etiquette and training. Prek. A manifestation of mana appeared behind Eugene, taking shape and adding even more weight to Rhaenyra's already restrained limbs. This lady is the child of the Black Dragon. If you so much as harm a single hair on this lady's body, the Black Dragon will not forgive you. You will be vaporized without a trace by his dragon breath, and your soul will suffer forever in. Just be quiet, Eugene commanded. His fist connected with Rhaenyra's cheek. Although the blow didn't cause her any pain, she abruptly stopped screaming as her head jerked to the side. After a moment of silence, Rhaenyra's eyes began to fill with tears. With her head still turned to the side, she slowly shifted her gaze toward Eugene. It hit me. Her voice shook with disbelief and anger. It hit me. Eugene lifted his fist again and Rhaenyra recoiled with a stifled cry. She tightly shut her eyes while tears streamed down her face. However, instead of striking her again, Eugene took hold of her cheeks with one of his hands. Bweg. Rhaenyra's lips pursed like those of a carp between Eugene's fingers. Eugene glared indifferently at that idiotic face. The dragon's eyes met the human's and she felt a wave of fear wash over her. His golden eyes were cold and unfeeling, like those of a beast that was about to strike its prey. Rhaenyra's quivering eyes watched Eugene's hand. She couldn't help but wonder what he was planning to do. When his thumb and index finger approached her forehead like a pair of tongs, Rhaenyra's heart raced with apprehension. Wait, not that. Stop. Rhaenyra shouted hastily. However, with her cheeks being squeezed, her words came out smushed and all Eugene heard was gibberish. Crack. As Eugene's fingers approached the jewel in the center of her forehead, a streak of black lightning crackled. Keek. Rhaenyra let out a piercing scream unlike any she had emitted before. Her previous screams had been out of fear and panic, but this one was a result of real pain and it ripped through the air. I guess I shouldn't pluck it out, Eugene thought. The resistance he felt was significant and unusual. So instead of trying to pull the jewel out, Eugene flicked his fingertip against it. Kaiya. Rhaimyra's eyes rolled back and she stopped screaming, eventually fainting with foam coming out of her mouth. Eugene felt relieved as this made things easier for him. He stood up, took Akasha out of his cloak and looked down at Rhaimyra's unconscious form. I got lucky, he said. Eugene had not expected to encounter the Dragon Duchess immediately after entering the Dragon Demon Castle. With a pleased smile, he pointed Akasha's dragon heart at Rhaimyra's forehead. The power of Akasha's draconic spell began to unfold.